After a pretty slow couple months of fights, June and May were some of the slowest months for MMA in a very long time. We are heading into the best month of the year for fights. With July beginning, I'm going to start previewing every single month on what's to look out for in all the fight cards. How does each month stack up? What are the best cards? What are the best fights? What are the best picks? Definitely go to mybookie.ag, promo code Weasel, and giving some early predictions here. July is a big turnaround. We're getting 2 pay-per-view cards, absolutely stacked, a great fight night card with a returning English heavyweight that we've been wanting to see for a bit now since he got injured, Tom Aspinall. The fights just do not look better than they do in July. Let's go over these fights. So the first card of July, we're starting it strong with UFC 290 on July 8th. The card is going to happen in the usual time slot, and it is going to be headlined by Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez and Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja, and a couple more fights that can headline fight night cards like Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis, in my opinion, might overqualify even headlining a fight night card. Jalin Turner vs. Dan Hooker absolutely could headline a fight night card, and Bo Nickal, one of the biggest prospects in the sport right now, is getting a bit of a step up in competition, not too big, against Tresean Gore. Not only is the main card completely stacked, but so is the prelims, and the early prelims have some fantastic fights that we're going to probably see a lot of finishes happening. Starting in the prelims, Vitor Petrino is an excellent finisher going up against Marcin Tybura, who's doing pretty well these days. Cameron Simon is another undefeated prospect going up against Terrence Mitchell, which is another good prospect in his own right. Those are the 2 main fights that you probably want to look out for on those early prelims. You do not want to miss out the Petrino and Tybura fight. The prelims looks like a fight night main card. Yazmin Jauregui is, in my opinion, one of the best prospects in women's MMA right now. She's 10-0 from Mexico, which is a booming country for MMA. A lot of talent coming out of there in the past few years. She's going up against Denise Gomez, and I'm expecting a very good performance out of Yazmin Jauregui. Unfortunately, Sean Brady versus Jack Della Maddelena is not happening, as Brady pulled out today due to an injury, which leaves Jack Della without an opponent, and he's asking for someone ranked to step up in 8 days' notice. It's gonna be hard, man. I can see maybe Neil Magny, who is willing to fight anybody anytime, coming off a good win. He probably wants a piece out of Jack Della on a short notice, and it's coming off a fight that happened last week, so Neil Magny honestly makes the most sense. It is a step down in competition for Jack Della, but it is another ranked fighter that he could go up against. So regardless, anybody ranked for Jack is a good matchup. Headlining the prelims is Robbie Lawler versus Niko Price, one of the best bangers of the year. That fight should be 5 rounds. I want to see that action for 5 rounds, but who knows if he even goes that far. Both guys have crazy good power. Robbie is old in this game right now, and hopefully Price brings out the ruthless side of Robbie Lawler. Bo Nickal versus Tresean Gore is a fight, honestly, to make Bo Nickal look pretty good with a bit of resistance when it comes to the takedown defense and the striking difference between the 2. Gore is a way better striker than Bo Nickal on paper, but Bo's ability to mix up his wrestling so quickly could give him some openings on the feet to connect on Gore. Those head kicks, the overhands, a lot of stuff where Bo would make you think he's going to shoot a takedown, but he's actually setting up for a strike. I could see that happening to Gore as well. You have to respect that high-level wrestling, and when you do, you sometimes forget that he can strike as well. Definitely a fight to make Bo Nickal look pretty good. Jalin Turner versus Dan Hooker is a fight that I believe shows Dan Hooker's decline. Jalin Turner is one of the lesser-ranked lightweights, even though his skill and talent is better than his rank shows. This is a kind of fight that's going to show Jalin Turner most likely dominate the declining Dan Hooker, who's never been the same ever since the Dustin Poirier fight. This is the same guy that went to war with a number 2 contender, and ever since he sustained that damage, he looks like he's fighting underwater. So should be a good performance out of Jalin Turner. Robert Whittaker versus Dricus. We talked about this matchup a few times. Dricus is game. He has power. He is a ferocious fighter who will engage you the entire time, but you don't want to engage Whittaker too much outside if you're able to slip his punch and then return a shot like Yoel Romero and Jared Cannonier did rarely in those fights. Whittaker doesn't have the best chin to take that kind of damage, but there's a huge gap in skill. Whittaker is so much better than Dricus in everything. Dricus needs to turn this into a dirty scrap. He doesn't want to make this clean with Whittaker. Make it as filthy as possible. That's how Dricus will pull out this huge upset. Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. I see a lot more fans as the fight is getting closer riding with Pantoja, given the fact that he did beat Moreno twice already, and he has that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advantage on paper. Moreno is obviously a much better striker, where Pantoja could be a bit wild on the feet. Moreno is going to be better in the clean technicalities of striking, and even if he gets into a brawl, Pantoja wants to take this fight to the ground as fast as possible because Moreno's striking is looking cleaner, tighter, and more powerful fight after fight. And then of course the main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez, is a highly anticipated fight. A lot of fans seem to think that Volk is just going to run right through Rodriguez, but you can never be too sure with Rodriguez's skill set. Even Volkanovski just said, yesterday or something, that he's very excited about this matchup and the dangers that Yair brings to him, which means that he's not going to take this guy lightly at all. You're going to expect the best mental and physical version of Volkanovski versus the best mental and physical version of Rodriguez. And there's a lot on the line. Volk is the longest reigning champion right now. And there's an interesting statistic that one of my friends brought up to me actually. No champion ever since Tyron Woodley has kept the belt longer than 35 years old. Usman lost the belt at 35. Alex Pereira lost the belt at 35. Francis Ngannou is an asterisk because he lost the belt at 36, but that was a year after he was already looking to get out the UFC after the Cyril Gane fight, which happened last year in January. So technically, actually, Ngannou is the only one, but he waited out as he accomplished that. And Alexander Volkanovski is 34. Is he going to hold that belt for another year and a half? Going to be interesting. Could Yair be the guy to take it from him, or will it be the next generation, Ilia Topuria? Because Yair is actually the same generation as Volk, and a lot of the all-time great champions lose their belts to the next generation. But Yair could be the guy. It could come in the form of a head kick, a flying knee, some kind of brawling exchange, or even a submission off of his back. It's going to be hard to see Rodriguez dominate the fight, but to see him catch Volkanovski at any moment is something that would not be unexpected. Volk does have that wide stance. He could get hit by a lot of leg kicks. They're going to be head kicks that he's never seen before, like side kicks to the face, front kicks to the face, spinning kicks to the head, hopping switch kicks, a bunch of stuff that Yair will throw at the much shorter man, 5-inch height difference that Volk might not be ready for. He's partially blocking round kicks. Imagine coming across all those other variety of kicks that you never fought up against before. It's going to be a very difficult task to get by those kicks of Rodriguez, and even if he does, Yair's hands are getting better, not as good as Volk's, but the guy's a warrior. He gets into a brawl with Volk, things can get really interesting. But Volk's best way of winning this is absolutely mixing up boxing and wrestling. There are some leg kicks he could throw here and there, but he has to be careful of Yair picking his leg up above the kicks and kicking him to the face, which he could do better than anybody else. So on paper, man, this is one of the most stacked cards I've ever seen. And the odds pretty much do reflect a lot of what people are thinking. With Volkanovski, I think on my book, he is the biggest favorite. I don't think you could find him as a bigger favorite anywhere else. So he's a minus 476 versus a plus 325 Rodriguez. I am picking Volk to win as an early prediction. I might change it when the prediction video comes out. I like Rodriguez at a plus 325 as well. His win would be most likely a finish. I would definitely like to see it as a knockout or a submission, because he could drop Volk and then submit him after, because Volk is hard to just clean cut knockout with one blow. Brandon Moreno is on minus 200. He's actually decreasing as a favorite. A lot more people, as the fight is getting closer, are riding with Pantoja. I do like those odds for Moreno though. Robert Whittaker is a huge favorite against Dricus. I agree with it. Minus 357 versus Dricus' plus 256. Jalin Turner, minus 250 against plus 188 Dan Hooker. I actually like those odds for Jalin. I would imagine he was even a bigger favorite than that. Minus 250 is excellent for Jalin Turner, actually. The biggest favorite on the card, just like he's going to be on almost any card, Bo Nickal is a minus 1428. And Bo Nickal's going up against a plus 703 Tresean Gore. Whenever you see odds like this, man, it never hurts to put something on the massive underdog, because even though Bo Nickal's an amazing wrestler, this is MMA and he's young at this game. Anything can happen. Tresean Gore has one-punch knockout power. As a plus 703, I definitely like those odds for Tresean. I probably put a little bit on him. Niko Price, minus 277 against Robbie Lawler, who's plus 210. I think it's too big of an underdog for Lawler, because Price, even though he is younger, he's not that young in the game, right? He's taking a lot of damage, and he's never been a super technical guy either. I do see him winning because Robbie Lawler's chin is not the same anymore, but even at this stage, Lawler's still probably more technical than Niko Price is. He looked actually really good against Brian Barberino, who's around the same skill level as Price. It's just his chin couldn't hold up. Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Menafield is nearly a pick'em fight. That makes sense. Vitor Petrino, massive favorite. I could absolutely see that. The other big prospect of the card, Cameron Simon, is an even bigger favorite, minus 434. Yeah, this is definitely a really good card for the odds. Definitely want to look out for this one. And if you do, make sure to go to my bookie and sign up for that deposit bonus where you can match up your first deposit all the way up to $1,000 by using the promo code WEASEL. That's WEASLE. make sure to visit mybookie.ag. Holly Holm headlining the next card. Yeah, we can skip this. No, I'm joking. All respect to Holly Holm. Great fighter, has been around for a long time, in her 40s. I mean, she's a legend of women's MMA. Some people even say she's a legend of women's boxing. At what, 41? She's actually one of the oldest active fighters in the UFC. The card is not that great, if we're going to be honest. On paper, you have Duraev versus Park Jun-young. That's an action-packed fight, but it's not. You have Norma Dumont, so there is another reason to watch. Walt Harris versus Josh Parisian is another fight that's going to end in a first-round knockout most likely. Actually, Josh could drag it out because Walt Harris does gas out in like 1 minute. He could drag the fight out into the second minute and finish him. Amina Zaitar versus Francisco Prado is the best fight on the card. Both guys are excellent, great fighters. Amina Zaitar had that bad loss to Matt Favola, who's unexpectedly much better than anybody thought he was, especially with that latest knockout against Drew Dober. But Ottman was coming off a big layoff. He didn't fight for a long time before that and seemed to be a bit rusty in there. Terrence McKinney's on the card versus Nazim Sadikov. This, in my opinion, is the second best fight on the card. Tucker Lutz versus Melsik. It's so hard for me to pronounce that last name. I'm just gonna call him Melsik. Tucker Lutz versus Melsik, in my opinion, is the third best fight on the card. That's another one definitely you want to watch. Whoa, who's that? Victoria Dudakova. I've never seen her before. Definitely a huge fan. Gonna be watching that one for sure. Tyson Nam's on the card. That's gonna be a good one. Yeah, that's the card. There's a few fights on the prelims. 1 or 2 fights on the main card. I'm gonna have to rate this card a 3 out of 10. But there's never a card that's not worth on the odds. From my experience, the cards that actually are not that stacked seem to be the easiest to win because people bet more on like the big cards. So generally, the odds seem to be a lot more correct on these because it's more of the seasoned bettors who know the odds much better. They're gonna be getting on these more than just the casual fans. Oh well, my bookie doesn't even have them. Well, okay then. I guess it's not good enough for the bets. Then we get a pretty good fight night card after that. This card on paper, for a fight night, 5 being average, I'll rate like a 6.5 out of 10. It's above average card, pretty decent, with the main event being Tom Aspinall versus Marcin Tybura. This is a very good fight for Tom Aspinall's comeback. He should blow right through Tybura, who honestly he's performing better lately than he did before, but he still has that questionable chin. Tom Aspinall has the fastest hands in the weight class. He has good boxing, offensive technique. There are massive holes in his defense. He has a great double leg takedown, and in my opinion, superior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than Tybura's. Tybura's good on the ground. He's a well-rounded guy with not too much physicality to his game, but I think he'll be outskilled on the ground. It's a pretty simple fight. If Aspinall loses, he's gonna get caught because his chin is just way too high, or he didn't recover well from his injury. This is a fight that's set up for Tom Aspinall to look really good in his comeback. Molly McCann versus Stoliarenko is a great fight for McCann, a great style to go up against. I think she's going to be too physical, have too much power, the intensity is going to be too much. Stoliarenko is a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, she's a black belt, but we haven't seen too much of it in the UFC, other than her win against Jessica Rose Clark, who honestly gets submitted by everybody. It's going to be hard to see Stoliarenko have the takedown threat to get McCann to the ground because McCann is not reckless on the feet. She throws a lot, but she understands where she's at when she is throwing and doesn't get off balance. So I see that as a good win for McCann. Nathaniel Wood is on the card versus Andre Fili. This is a good matchup for Nathaniel Wood as well. Attempted to take out the old vet who is not performing well these days. Andre Fili had a controversial split decision win against Bill Elgeo. He got TKO'd in the first round against Joanderson Brito. No contest against Daniel Pineda. Lost pretty handily against Bryce Mitchell. Had a split decision win against Charles Jourdain, which a lot of people thought Jourdain won. And before that, lost to Sadiq Youssef. So in the last 3.5 years, all of his fights have been either losses or controversial wins. And Andre Fili's not young, man. He has over 30 professional fights, has been in the UFC for a pretty long time, and is 33 as a featherweight. I don't see him handling the grappling with Nathaniel Wood that well. On the feet, Andre Fili's range and movement could be a bit of an issue for Wood, but I think Wood is overall more technically sound these days than Andre Fili is, and overall the grappling is going to be way too difficult for Andre Fili to survive, so I think Nathaniel Wood is probably going to submit him. Paul Craig versus Andre Muniz. Craig's move down to middleweight is exciting, and this is going to be an excellent grappling match between supposedly 2 of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists in the middleweight division now that Paul Craig has moved down. Brendan Allen is arguably the best, but then number 2 is Andre Muniz. It's going to be interesting to see what Paul Craig can do on the ground. No sugarcoating. The stand-up is going to be atrocious. Hopefully this fight gets to the ground as fast as possible. And sometimes a fight between 2 grapplers is going to force a stand-up fight because both guys are going to defend the takedowns or try to take that path of least resistance. But the difference with this one is Andre Muniz tries to take down everybody he fights, even if it's up against another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, and Paul Craig pulls guard on everybody. So we're most likely going to see this fight on the ground with Paul Craig on the bottom and Mooney's on top, unless Craig cracks him on the feet and drops him and then gets on top. I don't know how this is going to turn up on the ground because we've never seen Paul Craig in middleweight before, but we do know that his triangles and arm bars are absolutely elite. I favor Andre Muniz, but I'm hoping to see something crazy out of Paul Craig. Jai Herbert versus Fares Ziam is going to be an interesting stand-up fight. Lerone Murphy versus Joshua Kulibau is the sleeper of the card. This is low-key one of the best fights. The undefeated prospect Lerone Murphy, excellent stand-up, actually decent wrestling as well, going up against the very much unexpected, seamless Joshua Kulibau, who has excellent hands, great boxing, he's tough, he's durable, he's extremely fast with his combinations. Lerone Murphy's probably going to keep this fight in kicking range, as that's where he's going to have the most advantages. That is going to be an excellent fight, might actually be the fight of the night. Davey Grant's always fun to watch. He's going up against Daniel Marcos, who's a very technical fighter. I do favor Marcos going into it. Mark Giacchese versus Yoel Alvarez. Haven't seen Alvarez in a long time, but I do think he should win this one. I don't know how this guy's going to keep cutting to this weight class, but Mark Giacchese is extremely talented. He just has a hard time putting it together. He doesn't really have that killer instinct, and I just think Alvarez is going to be a bit too dangerous. Unless Giacchese pulls something off that Arman did, takes the fight to the ground, and dominates on top, it's going to be interesting to see Giacchese handle that kind of striking. Makhmud Muradov versus Brian Barberena is probably going to be the banger of the night. That's going to be a wild fight. Chris Duncan's on the card versus Yanel Ashmos. For people that don't know, Yanel Ashmos is the guy that pulled off that huge upset against Sam Patterson. Remember, he countered Sam Patterson and then finished him with ground and pound? He was just catching him the whole fight with overhands. This guy's dangerous, and Chris Duncan is no one to play around with. Coming from Scotland, he had a good fight against Omar Morales, although it was very close. So I can see how Yanel Ashmos is going to be the favorite going into this, but that should be a fantastic fight nonetheless. And finally, ending July is the second pay-per-view card. Some people like it better than the first one. I think it's amazing. It's like the number 2 card of the year, but it's behind 290. This is going to be on July 29th, headlined by Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2. Fantastic rematch. Cannot wait to see it. Consistently been at the top of the lightweight division for a long time. They've been performing so well that we have to see them fight each other again after 5 years of their first fight. That's how great these two guys have been ever since that time. But you're probably going to see most of the same kind of stuff in terms of the attacks they go with. I think Gaethje is going to change much more than Dustin, because back when they first fought each other, Gaethje was a lot more of that brawler that we remember. After the Dustin fight and a few others, Gaethje changed the way that he approaches the fight. He became a lot more willing to back up, use footwork, and draw the opponent into his counter punches rather than force a brawl. If he brawls at Dustin, he's going to lose again. If he stays technical, I think he still loses because Dustin is just technically the superior fighter. But the biggest change that he's probably going to have to make is know when to throw the leg kicks instead of just hammering away at them. Because Dustin was finding his left hands on Gaethje's chin when Gaethje would hit him with the inside leg kick, because it's kicking Dustin's leg out into position to throw the left. That's actually how he started that finish against Gaethje. Gaethje kicked his leg out, Dustin placed his left hand on his chin and wobbled him. Now, the hardest thing about drawing Dustin into your counter punches is the fact that the guy's never off balance and he doesn't overreach. His boxing is beautiful to watch, nothing seems forced, it's not sloppy. Everything he does in the stand-up is with purpose. And it's a reason why most fighters have a hard time of countering Poirier. Most of the time that they hurt Poirier is because they were aggressive against him. Even Conor in their second fight was being aggressive with that boxing approach compared to what he did in the third fight. Or the way Dan Hooker, he was losing the technical matchup with Dustin, so he made it a brawl, took some punches but got in Dustin's face and just started exchanging with him, and that's how he hurt him. So Gaethje has those two approaches to make this fight better for himself. The first one is be more technical, do what he's been doing against other guys like Fiziev and Chandler, and actually his ability to stay technical against Chandler shows that he has the ability to stay technical against Poirier. But the second approach is one that's going to get him caught a lot. He's going to get hurt in that kind of fight, but it does give him that knockout chance of winning this. Get super aggressive. Go right after Dustin. And don't make it a technical fight. Make it more of a war than the first one was. But overall, I do favor Poirier going into this. Co-main event is Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. Pretty simple of how this fight could play out. It just really depends on how Jan approaches it. If Jan wants to win, he needs to take this fight to the ground. Pereira has, on paper, a glaring hole, and that is his takedown defense, and especially his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense. Fake up something high, shoot for the double, rinse and repeat for Jan Blachowicz. That's how he's going to win this. He has to watch out for the knees every time he does that because Pereira's going to try to throw something eventually to intercept it, but that's the path for Blachowicz to win. He could knock out Pereira, who's coming off that horrible knockout loss to Izzy, so he does have that opportunity, but he's outranged, and Pereira doesn't usually get right in your face like that if he has the reach advantage against you. Against Adesanya, he got in his face a couple times because they have the same reach. And he knows that Adesanya is a sniper from distance. That's how his usual style works. For Blachowicz, he wants to get in close and land that left hook. I can see Pereira in many different ways avoiding this. And it's mostly going to be used with his hands, because Blachowicz is one of the best fighters in the UFC at checking kicks. But it also does make Blachowicz very much plodding. He doesn't move, so he's going to be in the same place for most of the fight, and that's going to be excellent for Pereira to pick him at a distance, land even potentially head kicks later in the rounds, but more importantly, trying to line up that right straight. What worries me about Pereira, even in the stand-up, is he tries to catch everybody with that left hook, and a lot of times it's going to put him in the range for Blachowicz to try to hit him with the left hook. So it's going to be interesting. I wonder how Blachowicz is going to show up, and also, I wonder how Pereira is going to deal with getting into the range of throwing his left hook. Ultimately, I am going to go with Blachowicz if he goes with this wrestling style, but if he doesn't, I can see Pereira winning. Then we go to Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. This has to be one of Tony's last fights. There's no way he's going much longer after this. Two vets of the lightweight division have been around for what it seems like centuries, but man, I am worried for Ferguson's chin. Bobby Green has not slowed down as much as Ferguson has, not even close. In fact, a lot of people seem to think that Bobby Green is even better than he's ever been. I don't agree with that necessarily. He did have a streak going on in like the middle of his UFC career, which was really good, but he's a legitimate threat to even the guys at the bottom of the top 15. I just see Bobby Green winning. I don't see Ferguson coming out anywhere near the same as he used to be. His fight with Nate Diaz was not good to watch. I think Green just puts the hands on him. Paulo Costa versus Ikram Aliskerov. If Costa accepts the fight and shows up, I think Costa's gonna have a lot of trouble in this one. A lot of trouble with the jab, which has always been a weapon he had a hard time with. The right straight from Ikram, just how he knocked down Phil Haas with. Those straight punches are gonna be a nightmare for Paulo Costa to deal with, and mixing up with that are the takedowns. Costa's also extremely inactive. He got hit a lot of times by Luke Rockhold of all people. I don't really like his chances too much against Ikram, as I see his chin just getting in the way of those punches every time. I gotta go with Ikram on this one. Wonderboy versus Michel Pereira. This should be another classic, stylish win for Wonderboy. Michel Pereira is a wild one. He's trying to stay more technical these days, but no matter which side he tries to go with, wild and athletic, but gassing his cardio, or staying technical and composed, Wonderboy has the answers. If Michel Pereira tries to stay technical, he's gonna get eaten alive. There is nothing he could do, technically, that Wonderboy hasn't seen before. Michel Pereira being wild is actually probably better for his chances, even though he's going to run into a lot of counters. I wonder if he's going to attempt takedowns though. That's going to be interesting because he's a big, strong guy. Not that great at wrestling, but he does have the physicality to try to at least overpower Wonderboy. But ultimately, I think it's a good win for Wonderboy. Derek Lewis versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. This fight's not getting out like the first minute. Both guys are extremely powerful. They probably have more power than everybody else in the whole card combined. Even though a lot of people have a misconception about Derek Lewis's style, they think he's some brawler that just goes right after you. He actually doesn't fight that way. He's more of a counterpuncher and then exchanges with you after the counter. He waits a lot for his opening. Marcos Rogerio de Lima is that guy that runs straight at you to knock you out. And it's going to cause a huge car crash right in the first round. I'm probably gonna have to go with Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I think Derek Lewis is just too old at this point. He's gonna be outsped completely. Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland is a fight where I see Chiesa probably using his grappling advantage to take out Holland. I'm very shocked as to why Holland is fighting a grappler, but Chiesa is a top 15 guy, so maybe that's what it is. It's on paper a bad stylistic matchup for Holland, as Chiesa is around his size, if not even bigger, tenfold the grappler that Holland is, and is doing better these days of getting away from strikes by imposing that grappling threat. So I do see Michael Chiesa winning this fight. Trevin Giles versus Gabriel Bonfim. This is the welterweight Bonfim brother, and I see him winning this one, man. The guy's striking is excellent. I want to see more from his boxing though, because his boxing in his last fight looked a little bit sloppy, but it was his UFC debut, so maybe he had jitters. That should be a good one for Bonfim. Roman Kopylov versus Claudio Ribeiro should be a good fight. That is an excellent card, man. And let me see what the odds look like on my bookie here. So Dustin is a slight favorite against Justin Gaethje. He's only a -131. I think he should be a little bit more. I do like those odds for Dustin, so if you're going to bet on Dustin, you're going to probably like that he's not that big of a favorite. Jan Blachowicz is only a -144. That's a small favorite against Pereira, even though he has a massive wrestling advantage. I guess it's just trusting that Jan wrestles, and his 3 rounds, so maybe he does enough damage with his wrestling to get on top. But I'm actually kind of shocked because I do think Pereira absolutely has a chance of winning here. Damage trumps everything, and as long as it stays in the stand-up, Pereira has the opportunity to win a decision or even by a knockout. Bobby Green, massive favorite. I 100% agree, -344. Ikram Aliskerov is a slight favorite. I'm actually surprised they don't have Paulo Costa as a favorite. Ikram, who's going from non-ranked, his UFC debut, who honestly should be right now right outside the top 15 because Phil Haas is always around there, going up against a top 5 fighter in the middleweight weight class. I'm actually kind of surprised that he's the favorite, but I still would put something on him on those odds. Kevin Holland's actually a good favorite against Michael Chiesa. I guess they're banking on him knocking him out on the stand-up or getting him from the bottom like he did Jacare, but I'm actually surprised. I'm liking Chiesa as an underdog for sure. Wonderboy, big favorite, -238. Probably don't want to put anything on this because he is such big of a favorite and Michel Pereira is a physical specimen. Anything could happen in Wonderboy's older age. Derek Lewis and Marcos Rogério de Lima is a pick'em. Well, you can't really go too wrong on this one. And that's July, man. July is looking insane. 2 of the best pay-per-views of the year and a great fight night to go with it. Gonna be hard to beat the month of July for MMA, man.